everyone. Welcome back. We are here again for the big news show for the XR Today series. And we have on an amazing panel of people to speak about some of the newest topics happening in the news today in XR. So I'm going to go ahead and let everyone introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Amy, and then we'll go around to Kevin, Sammy, Cameron, and Jay. So let's kick it off for today.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Peck. I am the founder and CEO of EndeavorXR.
Hey folks, Kevin, greetings from the south of France. I'm a technology evangelist. I spend my time working with companies as they try to bridge the gap between the art of the possible and what you can actually do with the technology today, but heading towards that, let's say, industrial metaverse vision.
Hey everyone, I'm Sammy Tauber. I'm the founder and multimedia artist at Vinci.
Hey, I'm Cam Stevens, joining from Perth, Western Australia. I'm the founder of the Pocketknife group. I'm a safety technologist. I explore the intersection where health, safety, and technology meet at the cutting edge.
Hey, hello. As usual, Jay. I call myself an architect because my specialty is to tell the people, after we have this panel of people who can tell the businesses, can tell everyone what to do with with all of these technologies. I'm telling them then what they can't do with
it. Right. So we have a few questions that we're going to be asking for today, talking about the latest headlines. And we're just going to get some people's opinions on it. Feel free to jump in whenever you like. It's going to be kind of like a little bit of a melee if you ever think about Super Smash Brothers meets the technology industry. So let's go ahead and kick things off for today. So first up, welcome aboard and thanks for all the new faces and definitely all the old faces who are coming back to make this show possible. So thanks and my hat's off to you. So first off, we have Google releases AR Geospatial Creator for Unity. This was quite big news that was taking place in the industry. So I wanted to ask maybe some of the people here, what are your thoughts on this integration? And do you believe this is a great use case for both consumers and developers? Let's see, we'll kick things off, Kevin.
Yes, given what Google have invested in creating all the city maps. So it's an incredible resource. You've got Unity that has a huge footprint out there. So in terms of just, instead of both of them trying to do it themselves, let's see how it mashes up. So let's see what creativity millions of people come up with, right? In terms of both consumer apps out in the cities or, I know Unity do a lot around smart city twins. So what's that going to do for urban planning and utilities and whatever? So the more people that get this stuff into their hands and the less friction to get something off the ground, the better. So I think it's a good idea. Let's see how it plays out.
It's indeed a very, very important step, and I guess it's just the tip of the iceberg. The thing is just, let's take, for example, Tesla. They are not really car manufacturer. They are building the biggest scanners to drive around and scan your environment. So this additional data that comes into the game. I'm a little bit scared because right now when everyone has access to this and can build and do stuff and so on, that we will see very, very fast some kind of voices saying, oh, homegrown terrorism or any other kind of terrorism and yada, yada, you can misuse it to guide, blah, blah. All of this nonsense. We are simply doing stuff without thinking about the consequences. So the people need some kind of advice, and there needs to be part of this technology, and this might be into Cameron's direction, safety, security. So really, security by design. This is something that needs to be embedded. Love this idea. We will see more of it, but.
Well, I think there's also sort of the underlying, some of the benefits are that, this is, Cesium, Open Geospatial Consortium, really a sort of a collaboration. I think that as I read that they were also integrated with ArcGIS. So it's really the enablement, and what we need to do is no one cares about this technology. It's sort of why the metaverse went away. And now everyone's talking about ChatGPT is because there's day-to-day utility with ChatGPT. It's a very obvious way that any consumer can find some use case for them with the AI tools. we haven't done that in our industry. I think this really changes it. And then having the spatial awareness component is the way that it's, of course, the timing is very interesting too. June 5th is just around the corner with Apple's, big announcement, whatever that might be. But also I think we need to train people that there is this digital layer that can move, off of their phones into the world around them. So that, I think, from a behavioral standpoint and really generating interest and understanding how people want to use the technology, that's where I think this is going to add value.
You are completely right, Amy. It's really super important to play around. But again, if we don't check the safety layer, if we are not mindful, we as creators, we can define this. But the bunch of people out there, remember what happened with the AirTags from Apple. Brilliant stuff, love them. But now they are being limited because just some lunatics are misusing it. So here, in any kind of technology, needs to be some kind of kill switch, so that all of these lunatics, like on a gaming server, you can kick them out.
Yeah, but also there's a piece of this where I think we're going to learn also what even some of the physical safety mechanics are. Everyone walking around looking at mobile AR. We saw this with Pokemon Go. People were walking to lampposts, but we just need to be incredibly limber. And I think you're right. I think also, Cam, kind of where you sit is, I think you're going to start to see, the importance of the work that you're doing and how we can start to shore up some of both the physical security components and, of course, the cybersecurity components.
Absolutely. And Cam, Sammy, do you have anything you want to add about that?
Yeah, I mean, from a creator standpoint, I love what the Gorillas did. With the Gorillas, they did the AR core with the Geospatial API with Google, and it was really cool. Like at Piccadilly in New York, seeing like live real time the Gorillas on like inserted on top of the building and with the geospatial anchors. So I feel like there's like this opportunity for like digital overlays with like from a creator standpoint. But like Jay was saying, like how do we regulate and monitor all this from a safety perspective? We've already, as Amy said, with Niantic, Pokemon Go, people are like walking into like train stations and all of that and off buildings. Like they're so consumed in the game, like they're forgetting their physical surroundings. And I mean, now with with Google Maps and AR way, it's taking it to a whole new level. So from a humanities standpoint, we just got to remember how to maintain safety standards.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to misconfigure Pikachu and then you end up running into a brick wall. So, yeah, a bit difficult. Cameron, you were going to say something. I wanted to catch up.
Yeah, a couple of things here is, I mean, ultimately the end game is having head-mounted interface that's going to provide a rich experience when you're outside. Google Maps is an outside tool, realistically, and right now having this constrained mobile interface, handheld mobile device, to me, I think the UX is still off. From an enterprise standpoint, though, being able to demonstrate spatial representation of assets that don't exist yet and do that in a really quick and efficient way is going to be incredible. The things like what we're seeing with the Brisbane Olympic Games construction here in Queensland in Australia, being able to expedite environmental approvals, improve social understanding of how their community is going to be changing over time, I think is incredibly powerful, and that can be done quickly at scale and in a device that everyone has in their pocket. So the big concern I have, and I don't know if it's Lewis or Louis. I always call him Louis Rosenberg, but I don't know if it's Lewis. I'm going to say Louis. Sorry, Lewis, if it's you, if it's not that. But a lot of what he talks about, as well as others that talk about just this information overload, by creating so much additional, that experience that we have, and having, if I looked at the presentation of what this looks like, having pop-ups all over the place and overlaying Google Maps with all of this pop-up-y stuff, that's not the world I want.
Yeah, definitely. They've wondered about how to regulate the content that gets put on there. And so, yeah, we want to make it an unobtrusive kind of geospatial geotagging? Because I remember like way back in 2012, they used to have this thing. It was geotag or geocaching, and you would go and try to find random things that were placed around the world. And now seeing this in AR, it's going to be like it could get completely inundated. So only time will tell what happens there. So wonderful responses. I want to go and move over quickly to the question about VRARA, Qualcomm, and T-Mobile and Lenovo. They're actually creating like an immersive learning tool kind of use case at St. Ambrose University. And they were doing some very nice things where they were pulling together their technologies to kind of create this wonderful use case for the students working there. And I wanted to ask you guys, why is it important for companies to rally their technologies together for testing such novel solutions? And do you think that sharing this kind of empirical data will actually help to boost the XR industry overall? So whoever wants to take that first, feel free to do so. I guess maybe we can start with you, Amy.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm a big fan of Steve Grubbs, who's the CEO of VRARA. He's been a big proponent of education in XR since the beginning, of that company. And this is a perfect example of how some of the larger companies, and especially with Qualcomm, Lenovo, these companies are really investing in the ecosystem, and that's really what needs to happen, because we haven't had the level of kind of deployments that we'd like. We're not. It's still a burgeoning industry, and we're limited, of course, by the hardware. But this focus on the content, again, utility, working with the university, making it accessible to people, and then and just showing the capability, getting it in the hands of end users. This is just the thing that, as an industry, we've never been great at. And we can't rely on small, ISVs, independent software vendors, to sort of fund these types of programs. So, I'm really thankful that larger companies, Qualcomm's really been investing a lot. So has Lenovo. I know Magic Leap's also been investing in the ISV ecosystem. And this is what it's going to take. I think we need to have these, and also the bundled solutions, I think, is really important as well, where there's just headset, software, plug and play.
Absolutely, yeah. I think definitely we can check on Kevin or Jay. Jay looks like he has something to say. So
Yes, it's very important. I'm mostly questioning when these big players are being involved somewhere, what is their motivation? So of course it's important because we still don't have the reliable, transportable or highly mobile hardware and the right use cases, especially in learning. With learning, I'm very, very careful. I've been last year during the UN week in a panel, and one of these UNICEF guys mentioned, lifelong learning is the most important for the future. We will not survive without this. In the second sentence, he said, we don't have money for it. So we have to go into public-private partnerships, which means, and then my trigger started, because in 1906, Rockefeller has set up a fund to manipulate the educational system. In today's money, it would be 1.2 billion, because he wanted a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. So now coming back into this involvement, Qualcomm, T-Mobile, Lenovo, and so on, their primary interest, they are not intrinsic motivated companies. They do not want to bring the good into the world. So what is their true motivation? To get people addicted by the technology? Is it how to make as fast as possible, as many bucks as possible with crap? We've seen this from Facebook, right? Or now Meta, sorry. Meta currently released something with BMW together, some research project, which is complete crap. So here it's really about qui bono. Who has a benefit out of this? So yes, guys, do it, but please don't overdo it.
So if I may, Jay, that's a little unfair. Now, and granted, there are vested interests, right? Look, I'm around long enough in the IT industry. Years ago, Digital used to put all the microvaxes into the university, so we all learned True 64 Unix and whatever, SunSpark and whatever. So and they weren't doing it for a charity. I was at Intel, we had classmate PC, whatever, right? So everyone does. And I yeah, okay, there's altruistic, whatever motives. But to Amy's point earlier, the more people that can start to use this stuff, these are going to be the skills that we'll need in the future for the next generation of the workforce, right? Whether it's on those particular products or whatever, but the competencies, this is how we build it, right? We get the next generation kind of being comfortable with this from day one. So I think it's a good idea. But to Amy's point as well, this stuff is expensive. So universities, in the ideal world, Jay, somebody with $1 gazillion would give all this stuff free and keep updating it to the latest stuff every 3 weeks because the new kit is coming out. But unfortunately, we don't work in a world like that. So hey, if companies are investing in this, good. Granted, there's a hidden benefit, but I give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, that's the way we work.
The thing is, you are completely right. The more, the better. What I'm missing is to talk with others, to set up standards. And standards need to be open so that everyone can participate on something instead of inventing the wheel again and again. Because if you invent just the wheel, if you try to secure your market share, and currently with all of these interconnected technologies, there is enough space for everyone. So setting up standards so that everyone can participate on this ecosystem, that the content will not be locked in, that you as a university do not need to depend just to get your stuff from player A, B, and C, and the others are out. This is what I'm missing, and this would have been an announcement where I say, yay, go for it. If you as a consortia start setting up standards, and everything around metaverse, around connectivity, needs these standards. What we want to avoid, what the people want to avoid, is a meta login. That you only can deal with one specific type of headset in one ecosystem and only with approved content from this one guy. Nope.
But let's come back to the standards thing, because I have a thing. We don't need more standards. We need consolidated standards. But Cameron, I think you wanted to say something, right?
For me, what was being shown there was actually the shift in the relationship that we have with technology. This was about showcasing the hand tracking capability of Snapdragon Space's SDK. That's what it was showcasing. It was how we interact with 3D objects in 3D space and how we transfer knowledge in that capacity. So if you strip away the motivation of any other motivation, in the research element of that is how impactful is that in knowledge transfer? So in answer to your question, should we be sharing that knowledge? Absolutely, we should be sharing that with each other. And Qualcomm, just because it's a Lenovo headset, Lenovo is the reference device, the development kit device for Qualcomm Snapdragon Spaces. So whatever device leverages Snapdragon Spaces SDK will leverage that hand tracking and object occlusion and all those other capabilities. But that's what was being showcased there, in my opinion. So this was all about, what is the experience of the person? And if you just looked at the woman who was in the video, if anybody can see the link to this content, she was delighted. That's independent of the headset. The point here is that this person has now touched a 3D object in 3D space, moved it around, and learned something in a completely different medium than she's ever possibly had before. So that's the thing that we should be focusing on here, and determining what of that magic can we bottle up and actually scale out. That's what we should be focused on, and doing it in a safe and sustainable manner.
Yeah, you touched on something that was interesting too. That ironically, we have taught ourselves to interact with 3D objects and entertainment and data and media on a 2D screen. And even though we live in a 3D world, we are learning how to interact with digital 3D assets in a 3D space. We don't know how to do it. And so the more information we have, again, we need a broader data set of consumers and users to understand what are those natural interactions? How do people want to, what's the first thing they do? What is their instinct, and how do we marry that with then the SDKs and then the standards of the future?
Definitely. We do need that empirical data. I mean,
Yeah, I just want to add something about immersive learning and the concept of like eye tracking and pupil dilation in reaction to any like real-time adjustments or suggestions, whether it's from the AI or from someone remote or the program. I love the concept of how this is a paradigm shift for immersive learning, but at the same time, I've got a question. Do people then monitor their behavior when they're going through a learning or a training program, knowing that they are being monitored? And are there studies? This is a question that have proven that this is, not been a benign outcome for learning in terms of the knowing that you are being monitored with your eye tracking.
And not just the knowing that you are being monitored, but as well, you as the one who is being monitored to get full access to this data. Maybe you will learn as well something from it. And this is, so far as I know, not solved or not available in any use case.
Yeah, we did a project that was similar where we were, using the eye tracking to determine when someone was actually a worker was getting tired on a manufacturing line, as opposed to having a set break every day, to actually start using physical cues. And we determined that we had to sideline the company's network and actually deliver that data directly to the end user so they could make their own decision with that data, because we didn't feel comfortable and the company didn't feel comfortable having that data. That starts to get into, in the US, HIPAA and medical data. And you start to think of the reverse of that, of the manipulation that can occur, because especially with eye tracking, you're able to determine someone's level of interest to a degree that they may not even be aware of. So, turning that back towards the end user, it's a very dangerous place. But, at the end of the day, we talk about companies' responsibilities. At the end of the day, it's our responsibility as consumers. GDPR didn't happen until there was enough of a public outcry about where our data was going. We need to take responsibility for educating ourselves and insisting that regulators look at these mechanisms. We have the technology to deliver data directly to consumers. We have the technology to manage our own data. The question is, will we do it?
The research is difficult to do, but what is clear when it comes to serving data back to individuals for them to consume, interestingly, the only real factor of whether people care or don't care to look at that is the intrinsic motivation of what the goal is in the first place. So if there's no motivation there, and it's not part of a strategy and the personal strategy, you can serve up data to people and they won't even look at it. They won't open up the data set, couldn't care less. So we make a lot of assumptions about what people want their data for. But if we don't understand their motivation, we will never understand why or how they're going to experience that data, regardless of whether we give it to them or not. So it's really difficult to structure.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, that's really the big question is, we all talk about, we don't want our data out there, but do we want to do the work to really manage it? And I do believe there is an economy. It's a different economy. It's an exchange of value for data, and what that value is, we haven't built yet. And so but it's that chasm between now and actually building a simple mechanism so that people can manage their data, putting some kind of a personal AI assistant behind it. But again, then you start to see all the holes in the security of that data, when humans are the number one cause of data leaks, right? So it's an ideology at this point, but I think we have to make an effort to move towards it.
Definitely. Any other observations before we move on to the next one? All right, cool. Let's kick it off. I'm going to jump down actually to number 4. I want to talk a little bit about the metaverse again. This is, the pink elephant in the room thing that we've all been kind of turned our attention away to, and now everyone's focused on ChatGPT this and that. And I even remember NVIDIA, when they were doing their GTC conference, they actually focused 95 point such and such % on generative AI, and just that little bit towards the tail end of it about the metaverse and the Omniverse platform. But the interesting thing is that we're looking long term. And in one of the studies that we found, the metaverse faces widespread adoption, and it talks about 47% of UK customers believe that that's what's going to happen. So for you, we talk about the future of the metaverse and which generations it's going to kind of play into. Now, do you think it's going to be in the younger generations, Generation X, Millennials, Zoomers, whichever ones? Who do you think is actually going to be the primary adopters of this technology?
Well, I wouldn't believe any surveys out of the UK because of Brexit. Just like, I'm going to start right there, and I'm going to say that I don't believe that anyone in the UK knows what the hell they're talking about. They're just like, yeah, we'll tick that box. Sure, we're going to be in the metaverse. Like, no. And I think I've had many people send me, the headlines, the metaverse is dead. It's because we called it the metaverse and because it was delivered to us by Meta. Like, this is why nobody cares. But it's not about who, it's about why. And we haven't answered that question for consumers, clearly. There's very obvious business cases. I think there's a little bit of a trust challenge on the hardware side. I think it's hard for a company to go all in on one particular hardware because it's going to start changing very quickly. Who knows what's going to happen with HoloLens 2? Google's working on something. They have a number of the original HoloLens engineers. Apple's coming out with something. I think we're stuck on what we're calling it, who's going to use it, and we're not thinking about why is this not been widely adopted? Even in enterprise, there is significant ROI to prove that with education, with knowledge transfers. Cameron was talking about, like, the ROI is off the charts, and yet still we don't have massive deployments. That's really, to me, the bigger question. Consumers will come on board when they care about it. They'll care about it when it makes sense from an economic standpoint or from a utility standpoint. And I'm flummoxed as well. I don't know why we don't have more adoption.
The thing is that the core around metaverse, however, is multimodality and interoperability. We don't have this. We still have silos. We have domains where the people are trapped in. You cannot just seamlessly go from one platform to another platform. And so it's not about generations. The generations, they will see it from their own perspective. They will use or misuse it from their own needs. So what we are, the younger one might be the forerunner, simply show them. It's like with a smartphone. These early adopters, these are tech-savvy people that are simply infecting the others with, it's cool, you have to use it. Remember what happened with the iPhone. So it's about easy access. It's about more or less affordability. It needs to be worth the price that you are paying. And it's about the use cases. Why the heck should I use it? Why should I walk somewhere outside with a pair of glasses or whatever and use this technology? These are questions that are not solved. These are questions that only just a small group of people are asking. Rest is just somehow trying to sell their own stuff that they have developed without ever questioning, do I really solve a problem? Is there a need for it? Or is it just another cow that I want to sell somehow and make crap loads of money?
I was going to say, I've noticed when I talk to people around the world about the metaverse that they see it as this very fake, inauthentic industry. And, I feel like there's this deep burning desire in the world right now for a return to authenticity. Like, we've seen, like, the documentary on Netflix, is it The Social Dilemma, and what Web 2 and all the social media has done, and algorithmic filtration bubbles, to people's lives and warping their perceptions of reality and their understanding of the world. So I can actually understand why maybe the metaverse hasn't reached mass psychology and consumer adoption, because there is this fear, not this love-based mentality. There's a fear-based mentality that everything that happened in Web 2 will only become amplified with the metaverse. And that's why there's a deep burning desire to return to the authentic. So I feel like if we can find a way to bring soul into the metaverse and create a sense of authenticity, and a true understanding that this will actually benefit people's lives with real use case scenarios, as Jay said, then people are more likely going to be willing to accept this new reality of all this tech stack of the metaverse.
Right. So I'm an optimistic kind of guy, right? But I love Amy's comment in terms of, well, to all my British friends, based on what they voted for Brexit without knowing what it was, maybe they voted for the metaverse without knowing what it was either. And, ye that know me, I'm all in on the industrial metaverse. I still don't know what it is. And I can have a religious debate with people about the fact it has to be in VR. No, it's just a 3D model and it's a digital twin and whatever. But whatever you want to call it, it's happening, right? So I do think that whether we call it the metaverse or whatever we think, this whatever perfect storm of digitalization of different technologies, we are going to be using this kind of stuff in some way. Last time around, you asked me what do you think. I thought it was a brilliant year for the industrial metaverse compared to what we've been doing over the last couple of years. What's the definition of this thing? And I'll come back to the standard. We need standards for the definition. Sorry, we need standards for the metaverse. If someone can tell me what the metaverse is, we could probably write down some standards. But seeing as we don't know what it is, how do we write standards? And I've been around too many years. Where do standards come from? Whoever sells the most. So we'll come up with the standards in about 5 or 6 years' time when we see what sticks. But we are headed into this rat hole where, and it'll be good. It's like technology. People will use it for good. People will use it for bad. But hey, welcome to the human race.
This is a question about generation and adoption. In the heart of the question. And if I look at some of the other trends that are in enterprise, because that's again my focus, anything that shifts the relationship with technology to be more human will be adopted by any generation regardless. So a good example is the use of voice. We're seeing a significant uptick in the use of voice to interact with technology. Mobile phones. And there is absolutely no evidence, my anecdotal evidence or ethnographic research suggesting that the older generation, in fact, they probably use it more because it's more delightful for them. They don't have to type. They were constrained into this little thing, which is totally unnatural. So anything that gets people free, eyes up, immersed, hands moving, people want that. And that's not a generational thing, I don't think. Will people feel more comfortable earlier on? Maybe, but it's not my experience with voice, and it's certainly not my experience with people like to see 3D objects because it gives them visual context. So if they have to look at a piece of paper versus see an object in 3 dimensions, it doesn't matter what age you are, that is still something that is beneficial to get context. So in answer to the question, regardless of what the end game is, ultimately anything that makes our relationship with technology more human won't have a difference in the generation that uses it, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just going to quickly jump in because this, of course, brought to my mind a few of the things. This guy here, Louise Brothers Martin, and also his colleague Samantha Wolf, they wrote this book together, Metaverse. And this is what I think a lot of people really need to do in order to get into the subject of defining what it is. We need to conceptualize this in a way that people can understand it from start to finish as to how the metaverse is going to impact people's lives on a regular basis. Because, we can always have this interesting technology, but if there's no real use value, then people aren't going to adopt it. So one of the things that we've been focusing on the XR side here at XR Today is communicating that to people. This particular group of people have used this technology. How did it benefit them? What kind of empirical data did they create? And using that scientific method, that's going to be the best way to show why the metaverse is going to be relevant and how much progress they have been making, rather than just using a marketing ploy and say, oh, well, in such and such amount of time, we'll be able to use it by our headsets. So I think, I think that that's the way forward, making this as scientific as possible. Kevin, you jump in?
Yeah, but you did mention marketing, and Samantha in particular, Samantha Wolf, she's been in this industry for a long time, and she started kind of on that marketing tip. She now teaches at NYU. So there is still a marketing component to this. We still have to kind of sell it to consumers because they're also not going to care about the empirical data. It's like, we are what's in it for me, right? That's really where, and it is going to get interesting for consumers, but we haven't really tapped into that yet. I haven't read that book yet. It's on my list. But I think, I think they're right in that approach. It's like, we certainly need the data, but we're going to have to sort of sell it to consumers. We're going to have to convince them that there's a reason that, whatever this expensive, maybe potentially, $3,000, $3,500 device that's purportedly coming from Apple in a couple of weeks, that's going to be worth spending that money, right? They're spending that on their mobile devices now, right? But will they spend it on a head-worn device? That's still a question.
Just a quick one. Tim Sweeney had a great tweet during the week on the CEO of Epic. There was an article flying around, Metaverse is dead, never arrived in Forbes or whatever. I mean, decent article, but whatever point of view. So his thing is, we better tell the 300 million people that are playing Roblox and Fortnite and Minecraft and whatever that we better have a wake. They haven't realized it's dead yet. And now you can have a big long discussion as to whether I play more Fortnite than I should, but is Fortnite the metaverse that we think, or is it just a piece of the puzzle, whatever? But it depends on your definition. So maybe the folks in the UK were all playing Fortnite and they were asked, are you going to be in the thing? And they said, yep, because Tim Sweeney said it's the metaverse. And I don't think that's wrong, right? It's not the ultimate answer, but it's like we just got to get away from, we have to define it exactly, and you're right and I'm wrong, right? And the interoperability and the whatever, we have a huge amount of work to do. But this train has left and it's not slowing down.
With a lot of it, I think a lot of people are just going to have to kind of wrap their head around it. When you ask the average person, what is the metaverse to them? What kind of answers have you received? Maybe going around polling people or other things like that.
Or if they talk to business people, they say it's digital twin, digital. It's the metaverse for business is digital twin.
Again, we've been around a while. Some of us, when someone said, "Oh, the internet," and you asked people 20 years ago, "Are we going to use the internet?" Most people said, "I have no idea. What's the internet?" And now we're all wondering why we can't figure out what the metaverse is. Different term, same conundrums.
There are places on this planet where when someone tells you, I'm in the internet, it just means they have a Facebook account. And this is scary.
Brilliant conversation, everyone. I do appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining for this episode of Big News Show. Once again, I'm Cureton, senior journalist from XR Today. We've had on Amy Peck, Kevin Donovan, Sammy Tauber, Cameron Stevens, and Jay Latta from all across the internet and all across the different industries in this metaverse journey that we're all taking together. So if you like these kind of conversations, please follow us at the XR News hashtag. Feel free to join us at our Twitter and LinkedIn accounts. And thanks so much for spending your time with us today. And until next go round, bye now.